Good evening, everyone. The hour of 6:30 PM having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Board. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel. The video will also be available for streaming on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Will staff please conduct the roll?
Harold Farrington,
Here.
Roberta Mastrogiovanni, Mayor Jay Kahn,
Here.
Councilor Molly Ellis,
Here.
David Bergeron,
Here.
Mike Hafer,
Here.
Kenneth Kost,
Here.
Andrew Madison, and for the alternate, Stefan Mayu,
Present.
Tammy Adams, and Joey Cosivera. And Mr. Chair, there is a spot available if you'd like to invite the alternate to vote this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner. Yes, I would like to invite Mr. Mayhew to participate as a voting member in tonight's meeting. So noted. Okay. Who's doing my motions tonight? You, Mr. Cost?
Sounds like I am, if these are down.
Thank you for volunteering. So our first item on the agenda is minutes from the May 26th, 2026 meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Oh, okay.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Second, if you need it.
All right, great,
Still?
thank you. Any corrections, comments, questions? I actually noticed a couple Scrivener's corrections. Line 518. There's the T left off of the word taxes. It's not axes collected. And on line 674, there's a phrase that says, "he sadded." It should be "she added."
So that was 674.
674, yes. Okay, I think now we can proceed to the vote, unless there are any other comments. So all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended? Any opposed? Unanimously passed. May I ask staff if there are any extension requests on the docket this evening?
No, there are not.
Thank you, Ms. Berner. May I ask if there are any conditional approvals ready for final approval tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 3 applications that are ready for final approval this evening. The first is for PB-26-9, which is a major site plan for Froling Energy for the properties at 20 and 37 Manchester Street. There were 3 conditions precedent to final approval, including that the owner's signature appears on the plans, submittal of the paper and digital copies of the final plan set, and submittal of a security to cover the cost of landscaping, erosion, sedimentation control in a form and amount acceptable, and all 3 of those conditions have been met.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion for final approval on PB 26-9.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Any discussion or questions? All right, we'll call the vote. So all those in favor of the motion to issue final approval for PB-26-9 indicate. Any opposed? Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to I can't remember that project. Is it a multifamily?
no,
So,
this is the Froling Energy, which is the
Oh,
they're redoing their
Okay,
parking lot
yes,
and
okay.
putting an additional curb
It-
cut.
okay,
Yep.
okay. Thank you.
all right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next project is
So,
P.
I'm sorry, I just want the vote was
Unanimous.
unanimous for approval, final approval.
Thank you. So the next project that's ready for final approval is PB-26-11. This is for 30 to 42 Production Ave, and it was a major site plan application as well as a surface water protection conditional use permit. There were a number of conditions, so I'm just going to read through them. The first was owner's signature appears on the plans, the submittal of the 5 full-size paper copies and a PDF digital version of the final plans, submittal of a security, again for erosion and sediment control measures, as-built plans, landscaping, and a conservation seed mix. Submittal of a revised site plan that shows the installation of 1 3-inch caliper American linden tree and 1 3-inch caliper swamp white oak in place of the 2 proposed red maple trees. Addition of a note to the plan stating that best management practices for invasive and noxious plant species shall be utilized. Submittal of a new design for the rain garden that preserves the 3 mature trees. And then submittal of a salt reduction plan. I believe that was all the conditions precedent, and they have all been met.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I
Mr.
could,
Mayor, yeah.
if I could ask again, the petitioner on that request is who?
The applicant is Fieldstone Land Consultants, and the application was on behalf of GMS Realty. This is the building is on Production Avenue, and they have like 1 row of diagonal parking in front of the building that's needed for customers, and so they're hoping to expand their parking lot and back to provide 24 parking spaces for employees. But because they're adjacent to a city tax ditch, which has a wetland adjacent to it, they had to, their stormwater management system was built within the surface water protection buffer. And so that's why it came up to the planning board. So I don't know if were you here at the planning board meeting when we were discussing the really long skinny rain garden? That's this project.
Yeah, they needed some space for loading and unloading big semis, basically, in the back.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I will ask to, or entertain a motion for final approval for PB 26-11.
Move to issue final approval for PB 26-11.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cost. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor of issuing, oh, sorry.
No, I'm going to say yes.
Nope. Okay. You jumped the gun on me. All right. All those in favor of final approval for PB 26-11 indicate. Any opposed? PB 26-11 is unanimously approved for final approval. And you have a third, Ms. Brenner?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The final application ready for final approval is PB-2025-21. This is a 2-lot subdivision at 315 Old Walpole Road. This was also a surface water conditional use permit. And the conditions of approval include that the owner's signatures appear on the plans, the wetland scientist stamp appears on the plans, submittal of the 4 required paper copies, 2 Mylar copies, and a PDF version of the final plan set, submittal of the recording fees, inspection of the lot monuments by the Public Works Director, submittal of documentation demonstrating that subdivision approval has been granted by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, and a revised stormwater management report to be reviewed and approved by the city engineer. I believe, yeah. And so all of those conditions, except for the subdivision approval by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, have been met. And so staff are recommending that you issue final approval tonight, but with the addition of a condition subsequent stating that prior to the issuance of a building permit, the subdivision approval from New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services will be obtained. In talking with the applicant, the subdivision approval is being held up by the wetland permit, which they're expecting to hear back on that in early July. And so instead of having them wait to July, we thought tying that condition to the building permit would be sufficient. So if you agree with that, then this project is ready for final approval.
Okay, do we need to read that condition into the motion at this time, or?
Yes, please do. It would be move to issue final approval for PB-2025-2021 with the addition of a condition subsequent to final approval that prior to the issuance of a building permit, approval shall be obtained from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services.
All right, great. Someone want to move that as read?
I would move as read
All right.
approval of application 25-21, pending, all conditions pending a positive, with building permit not to be issued prior to Department of Environmental Services approval of their
Subdivision.
application.
Yeah.
Great. Second? Counselor Ellis, thank you. Any discussion? This was the one where the.
I remember.
You do, okay,
Yeah.
good, all right, great. All right, any discussion or comments? Let's proceed to the vote then. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. Unanimously approved for final approval, PB 2025-21. Okay, thank you. Boundary line adjustment, that's a placeholder on our agenda. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we have any tonight. Okay, so let's move into our first continued public hearing, which is a PB 26-12, major site plan and cottage court conditional use permit. Applicant Fieldstone Land Consultants, on behalf of owner Nuevo Transfers LLC, proposes to construct 4 townhouse buildings with a total of 14 units on the parcels at 0 Carroll Street, 0 Elm Street, and 225 Elm Street. Tax map plat numbers 536-049-000, 536-050-000, and, four of them, 536-055-000, and finally 536-056-000. The parcels are approximately 0.75 acres in total and are located in the medium-density district. Okay, so at this point, we will move to an update from the applicant.
Good evening, John Noonan from Fieldstone Land Consultants here on behalf of Christopher Masiello and Nuevo Transfers LLC. So the continued hearing was based on a few items. We were looking at the orientation of the building. So currently we have the gable ends of the building, the smallest, narrowest end of the building facing the street frontage. And the architectural elements of that gable end was to try to mimic more of a residential style on the end of the building. So the architect has revised the ends of the buildings, so each gable end facing the building, facing the road frontage would have, the windows are now aligned with each floor, and the doors have been, there's a doorway that was added with a small roof overhead. So each gable end will have this doorway, and then the windows aligned, top to bottom on each floor. Similar to the homes in the neighborhood, where almost the majority of the homes in the neighborhood have the gable end facing the roadway, including one of the larger apartment buildings that's nearby is also oriented that same way. There was questions on if we had looked at other options of orientation on the building. We had done other concepts in the past. Tim Sampson Architects had also done, prior to us coming on board with the project, had also looked at different orientations, but I can share some of those that our firm has looked at. So I'll look at the plans. Can everyone hear me on the mic? Looks like it's on. So we had concepts where the buildings were oriented in parallel to the streets. So we have Elm Street on this side, Carroll Street on this side. So the frontage is along Carroll and Elm. We had looked at options of buildings oriented this way. We also had them closer together at one point. And the reason this one did not go forward, we ended up having pavement for a 22-foot wide aisle, building setbacks, holding the buildings at the setbacks, basically no green space around the building, and this ended up with much more pavement than the orientation we have now. So orientation in this manner added pavement volumes. It made our stormwater would have to be 4 stormwater practices versus 2. So substantial cost there. We'd also looked at options of rotating some of the buildings with the gable end, short end towards the street, and additional buildings with the long ways. In a similar fashion, we had to have narrower drive aisle, added a lot more pavement, really restricted access for stormwater management here, so it really limited the site that much more. So we ended up back with the orientation we have now, where the gable end faces the street on both sides. This would maximize our room for stormwater management and minimize impervious areas for, so we'd have less pavement. And then it allows for a central drive aisle connecting both ways, so traffic leaving or entering could go to either street, and allowing, the orientation to be similar to buildings and homes that are in the neighborhood already. So we found that this was the most efficient layout. In the site walk, I think it was apparent of all the buildings around and homes in the area have a similar layout where the gable end faces. So we did look at that.
Excuse me, just one second, Mr. Noonan. I just have a process question. Can the people in the audience see the plans?
Mr. Chair, if I may. Yeah, I just spoke to our AV tech, and he was just able to turn the screens on so that they can now see what John is
Okay, great.
presenting.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm glad
Sorry
to
about that.
flip back through sheets if anyone needs to see them on the monitor. Yeah. So we're looking at the current plan right now. That's this gray plan. That's been submitted. We have plantings along the frontage. And as I was mentioning, the 32-foot wide section of the building, that's what faces the street on both Carroll and Elm. Oops. These other options that were shown here and highlighted was looking at options if we had the buildings running with the long face towards each frontage of Elm and Carroll, and parking in the rear with a central driveway. And as mentioned, because of the building setbacks at the north and south, We only end up with a 22-foot wide drive aisle, whereas we have on our current plan is a 24-foot drive aisle, and this actually ends up with more pavement than previously in the other option. You know, the other options where we had the buildings closer together and having a driveway on one here and one here, we ended up with an even smaller driveway that would not meet the 22-foot minimum for Keene's driveway width. So that's where we ended up back at how we ended up at this orientation was ultimately trying to keep the gable ends facing the narrowest to the street. We had trimmed back our fence line along the frontage to meet the back corner of the building so that it kept the rear lawn areas or exits from the building as somewhat of a backyard, and with the 6-foot fence providing somewhat of a private backyard. And then we replaced, when we trimmed back that fence, was to add trees and ornamental trees along the frontage to break that up. One of the other items discussed was also the cost of the soils amendment and geotech with deep foundations. So our client had provided, when they priced out with the geotech, they were looking at about $400,000 additional cost just for foundations. They are yet to decide exactly what type of deep foundation that is. We have submitted the geotech report that was provided that shows between 40 and 42 feet is where they hit refusal, likely bedrock. So they'd either be looking at steel piles down to that 40 or 42 foot depth, or doing a geopier, which is a aggregate foundation, or doing heel coils, but they're looking at different options on that for that deep foundation. But overall, the geotech told them you're looking at about a $400,000 additional. That $400,000 additional really put them to where they want to maximize density and hold to 14 units so that it spreads out that cost across those extra 2 units, help spread that cost. So that was ultimately where they told us to, we have to hold as many units as we can. So we're trying to get 14 units because of the extreme cost for the geotech work that'll be done. So that was submitted. And then we had, as our last item with engineering, was the sewer capacity. It was brought up at the last meeting by an abutter about sewer, water, potential capacity, and then drainage was discussed. We had submitted, initially was our drainage report for stormwater management, and Brian Ruoff, the city engineer, has reviewed that again. He said we meet everything for the standards for the city for meeting for drainage. And then water capacity we had tied through, so there's a water line, which we had revised a little while ago prior to the previous meeting, was having the water line run between the streets. That ultimately provides a loop and doesn't drop pressure in the city. Brian said that alleviates any question on not having capacity, so it's absolutely has capacity by looping the water lines between the 2 streets. So water's not an issue. And then sewer, we're working with the city DPW on potentially upgrading the sewer line. So our client has agreed to upgrading the sewer if deemed necessary from the manhole that we tie into up to Spruce Street. So Spruce Street was upgraded when they did Elm Street sewer. So it is plastic pipe. Brian Ruoff also confirmed that the piping in Elm and Carroll is plastic pipe. They haven't had any complaints. No one's filed complaints with the city saying that they've had issues in the neighborhood with sewer backups. So ultimately, we got a price from VHB that would be modeling the neighborhood to see what capacity it is. There's potential at the 6-inch capacity might be fine with these additional units. If it's not, our client's already agreed, and we've sent that to Brian, is they would upgrade to an 8-inch line along Carroll Street to Spruce Street. And that is listed as a condition of approval already, was to, that we address that with engineering.
Okay,
And those
great.
are the last comments that were open.
Thank you. Board members have questions for Mr. Noonan? Mr. Cost?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious on the delta of the pavement where the where they go parallel with the streets, you said it's more pavement than this. Is it, because looking at it, I can't tell, is it
Yeah,
significant?
it's probably
amount
about
of pavement?
20% more pavement, because we still had to hold the width between the buildings to have enough turning radius. So we had a 24-inch drive aisle with the driveways in front, so we still had the garages in between. So it added about 20% additional pavement. Plus, we had to do 4 stormwater management areas separate, which would have more structures than doing 2. So ultimately, we have 2 on this plan where stormwater management is done on the north and south boundary. And then we're just utilizing that straight aisle, saves having the aisle plus additional pavement.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hafer, did you have your?
We're still in the overall scheme of things. We're still in the questions for the applicant stage, not deliberations.
That
Make
is
sure I'm
correct.
in the right
Yep,
spot.
yep.
Thanks.
Ms. Brenner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just got a question from the mayor, so I figured it would be helpful perhaps for the whole board. The question was related to if you weren't present at the last or when the public hearing was opened or at the site visit, are you able to participate in and vote on this application? And the answer is yes. That's why we sent out the materials ahead of time. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to review the materials in the packet, the minutes from the last meeting. There's also recordings online. So I just wanted to share that so everyone is in the loop.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yes. Seeing as I wasn't at the site review. The 7 units are in each building?
Correct. There's 7 in each. So the orientation is 4 units. There's a 5-foot gap between a 3-unit. And then same mirrored on the other, so 3 units and 4 units separated by 5 feet in between. Between
2 separate buildings
2
on each
separate
side.
buildings. 5 feet apart.
But connected by foundation, structure, and roof line?
Roof line matching, foundations would be separate. However, if they do piers for the deep foundation, they would likely share a row of piers with a grade beam on it. So you'd have these deep piers that are going 40 feet deep with a beam on top of it and then the foundation sitting on top. So you'd have a separate foundation for this building, but likely sharing a grade beam for foundation, for deep foundation below.
Intended for storage and mechanical?
No, this was,
I mean, the below grade.
so we're coming in at grade with a garage and mechanicals on that grade level. And then living space on the 2nd and 3rd floor.
Second and,
3rd.
I mean, there's no storage to the gabled area.
There is, between the buildings, are you asking?
No, above, you said gabled roof. There's
No, there is no storage in the gate.
no storage, no mechanical, nothing.
No.
The foundation decision seems to be pretty important to the
Yeah, so-
overall structure.
Right, so they're looking at, 3 options on the deep foundation and looking at different costs for those. Yeah, so the foundations, they're looking at various options for the deep foundation. But ultimately, they're going likely to 40 feet, 42 feet to hit bedrock.
And have they done the geotech study?
Yes,
to-
so that would,
To determine, and
Yeah, that guy.
so the
I
foundation design.
saw the note, I guess
Yep.
you're seeking approval tonight, conditional on
The foundation.
upon what? Yeah.
The
whole
foundation
set.
design would be part of the building permit. They know they have to put in a deep foundation to support the buildings. They have a geotech report that supports that and was provided to the city.
Is there some validation of the piers when they construct this? Is there a commitment to having verification of resistance and testing and?
There'll be a structural engineer that does that design and signs off on that. And then city inspector would review those reports, similar to any other construction of the foundation if it was just a shallow foundation. Would be a stamp plan on build it this way, stamped by a licensed engineer, and then design. And that firm likely would do inspections along with the city doing inspections during construction.
During the drilling, and,
Correct, yeah.
but there's no condition relative to that inspection. My familiarity with piles is that there's some analysis in the field, and if we're gonna go forward with an approval this evening, even with the condition that there be some kind of report, verification of the site condition having been achieved in the field. I could expect, I assume that this is wet, that it's soft, there's clay or something like that. And, yeah, I mean, they may lose a pile, who knows what can happen. And, you know, that needs to be checked in the field.
Certainly, and that inspection would likely be required by the building permit process, not the planning board's purview of reviewing that inspection.
Mr. Chair, may
Ms.
I interject here? So that will be covered as part of the building permit process. It doesn't hurt if you want to put a condition that the structural engineer's reports will be reviewed and inspected by city staff. We're totally fine with that. That's already going to be happening as part of the building permit. But if it gives you peace of mind to make it a condition, then there's no harm. So, yeah.
Thank you. That would be a condition subsequent, though, I would think, right?
That's
that be
correct.
your
It would be,
recommendation?
yeah, it would be during construction that would occur. Yep.
Yeah, they're not gonna go ahead driving the piles if they don't have approval, I wouldn't think.
Say it again.
So it would be a condition subsequent, so they would have their approval. And then it would be a condition of the next phase, which is a building permit, yeah.
And we would write that in
Yeah, we
at
can
this
write that
point.
in and make that a
Condition number or letter.
2G, I guess.
Okay. Yep.
Mr. Bergeron?
Reading the report that you submitted from M&W Soils, they're talking about the helical piers. Is that the preferred method that you're looking at now as opposed to driving piles to doing the drills?
Yeah, so they're looking at multiple options. They haven't locked in on that. Per M&W's, I guess what they've given as for pricing and working with the helical coils. So that would be a different one. It's a big helical that's driven in the ground multiples, and they put a grade beam on it. So the grade beam is a big concrete beam supported by the helical coils, or you could just do I-beam driven in, or you can do geopier, which is aggregate. It's gravel and it compacts horizontally. Doesn't go as deep, tends to be less expensive. So there's potential they look at steel I-beam, or they look at an aggregate geopier style. The 400,000 was based on the helical coil with a grade beam, was their estimated cost for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Noonan. Is there an updated staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner. So there was an amended staff report that was included in the agenda packet, which just basically went through the items that were brought up during the previous public hearing for the application. I think Mr. Noonan did a good job of addressing all of those items. As he stated, the city engineer expressed no concerns about the potential for drainage to run off onto adjacent properties, so that's not really an item of concern. He is assured that there's sufficient water capacity on the site due to the fact that there's the closed loop design that was described by Mr. Noonan. And obviously, we included the updated elevations showing the few extra windows that were added, the entryways that are proposed to be added on the street-facing facades, as well as the more regular window alignment of those end units. And really, the only additional thing that I have to add is related to the sewer capacity, and that's really that without 100% being able to say that there is sufficient sewer capacity, what the city engineer is requesting at this time, or recommending rather, is that a sewer flow study be completed. This is something that staff feel can be included as a precedent condition of approval, just to show that there is adequate capacity. Again, we would recommend including that as a precedent condition, and then if you would like, you could also include a subsequent condition of approval that just sort of says, if the sewer flow study shows that there is not sufficient capacity in the existing sewer infrastructure in that area, then the applicant could submit the funds to cover the cost of improving the infrastructure in a form and amount acceptable, I would say, to the Community Development Director and Public Works Director.
Thank you, Ms. Fortson. Okay, any questions for staff? Mayor Collin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would your last comment about sewer line capacity be then added to 1G?
So 1G is the condition related to the sewer flow study. That's gonna show us the sewer capacity, and whether or not there's sufficient volume available in the sewer pipes that are existing. I would recommend adding, I guess it would be 2H, because it sounds like you might potentially be adding 2G, which would be the submittal of a stamped report showing the foundation design. And then you could add on another condition subsequent related to the applicant covering the cost of upgrading the infrastructure if it's deemed necessary based on the results of the sewer flow study. And that way, if you don't end up needing to fall back on that condition, we can make a note of that in the project folder.
Thank you. Other questions for staff? Okay. So, at this time, I will open the public portion, and can I just see a show of hands of folks that would like to comment? Just one? Two? Okay. Three? All right, great. So you guys could start at the right-hand side and move that way, or any one of you wants to come forward first, that's fine.
You can sit or stand, it's up to you, just make sure the green light is on the microphone. You might have to hit the button. Perfect.
Hi, Paige Taylor again, 125 Carroll Street. So I'm directly across from these. I'm happy that they didn't change the orientation. Boy, there's a lot. I just want maybe some people aren't thinking of things, so maybe I can say something that hasn't been thought of. When we're putting in more rooftops and asphalt, we're heating up the city. And we need our trees, we need grass, dirt, all of these things to keep the city cool. And when across the street was bulldozed and all the, vegetation taken out, I noticed it was hotter, plus the animals lost their habitats. And in my life, I've only seen one baby buck with the little tiny antlers that are felt, and it was in that field after they bulldozed, but I think he probably lost his home. But anyways, I just want people to think of, when we take out these little wooded lots, it really does have an impact on the animals and the heat in Keene and the charm. I've said this before, and so I'm just saying it again, that I know people say, oh, there's a housing crisis, but there was, over, 6 apartment buildings built in the last 2 years that brought in, I don't know, maybe 200 new apartment buildings. But what I'm getting at is, if there's a housing crisis, it means you're doing something right because people want to live here. If you go around and you change everything and you make 25 new places to live with big townhouses, you're changing Keene. And you're changing the quaint city that it is. Now there's too many people, there's too much traffic. Is it the place everybody wants to live in still when you're making such big changes? Because this is one of 25 that they want to do in Keene. It's not just across the street. It's behind my house. It's all over the place. So it's really going to change. And for me, I would say that I don't want to see it approved because of how many people are being brought into the place. So many more people living on the street, on Carroll Street. That's a lot more traffic, a lot more people. I don't know, there was a few things I wanted to say, but I think that was basically, oh, right. So he addressed a lot of things, but one thing I didn't hear being addressed was the impact structural damage to the houses around it, because it had a negative impact on my home, which I had Groundworks come in. They're a nationwide foundation specialist company, so they had engineers figure out where to put I-beams and jacks throughout my whole basement, because that bulldozing work had a negative impact on my house. So I would like to hear basically what is going to be done to monitor that for my home. I would hope everybody else around, the neighbors. So I'd be interested in that. And yeah, so I just wanted to say I wouldn't like it approved for the number of people. I can see they're going to build. The last time I was here, so many people were here and asked for it to not be approved, but then the board went to motion for approval, not denial. So I can see it's going to be approved, but I'm just worried about the number of people, and that if someone buys land, doesn't do their due diligence in testing the soil before they buy it, and spend $88,000 buying that lot, well, now it's become all of the people of Carroll Street and Elm Street's problem, and that he has to make more money to pay for building this place. That's just, not fair to the rest of us on the street that don't want to have this many more people housing on that street. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Brian Miller. I own a house next to Page and across the street from where they're planning to build this project. And I was here before, a month ago, and I'm still caught in the whole size, the volume, how we can put 14 units in there. When this met 3 years ago, the same property owner, He had 3 years to do all the research. Then, medium density, you could build 3 dwellings on those properties merged together. 3 years ago, the board agreed, and the neighborhood agreed, after looking at some rough drawings, that 5 dwelling units would be acceptable. And Nuevo got granted 5 dwelling units, February of '23. He waits 3 years. Somehow, we've now deemed that we can put 14 units where once only 3 could be. I don't know why we have zoning if they can be that much of a variance. I get the whole idea, concept of cottage court. I see it working beautifully on Pearl Street. I've seen it on River in, I think it's Portland. I see some of these developments. I see it where the property's marginal, so you have the acreage to build 6 houses, but it's not flat enough to build 6 houses, so you can cluster the 6 houses on it and get that and make it affordable and develop some property. But how we get that we can do on 3/4 an acre 14, that's like any one of you guys. Your neighbor's house burns down. Ask your spouse, hey, what do you think of 14 houses being built next door? Because they can do it now. They can call it a cottage court and build the footprint in a certain way, and we got 14 houses next door. In the neighborhood doesn't have a say in it. That blows my mind, that we have no say in that. That's unbelievable. I mean, when you were there and you looked at this place and you see the raised ranches on each side of it, and you look up at the tree and realize that the buildings are gonna be where the branches of those trees are, and looking 2 and 3 houses down, and not one dwelling unit, but all the rows of houses will be looking into the backyards of not just the house abutting them, but 2 back. And that these houses, and the cottage court concept was to bring a wide demographic. There won't be a senior citizen moving into these houses. They're going up 2 and 3 stories, coming out of the basement, going up 2 stories to go to bed. So that means there'll be young people. Young people will have kids. They'll have social gatherings. There'll be 14 people there. And that will play out much like the development on the corner of Gilsum Street and North Street. I watched Gina Pate try to sell a house there one time, and she had to be very careful when she showed it, because you get there Friday or Saturday, there's some sort of domestic going on, because when you have people that close together, they don't get along. Somebody's parked where they shouldn't be, somebody's kid's getting dropped off, and you're stuffing that right in our neighborhood. And that doesn't seem like that's what this board is about. I would think that you were here to protect us, to prevent development like that happening. And if this does happen here, there's already been a proposal, again, directly behind these Page's house, 160 feet away for 16 more units. So you set this precedent in the neighborhood. And now if it was a bad plan to start with, you've made it really bad. And I don't know how we've got here where we have no voice. In that I get that when you draw something up, this cottage court plan, that you couldn't have a number of units because then it would state how big the property was. But each one should be reviewed and see if it fits in the neighborhood. The design of the house fits in the neighborhood. The pure number surely doesn't. I don't know if you could have that. I can't think of a place that's got that kind of density, even down here. Across the street wouldn't have that kind of density. And I just hope in the board, you guys take that into consideration, that this is the same people, knowing the same expenses, had 3 years to do something about it, and if they wanted to unload it, move on, do something. But they've waited to come to this, and they're asking for the sky. They're not asking for another little bump. They asked for that other little bump to make it affordable. They already knew the expense then. They knew it was gonna be $100,000 if they did individual dwellings back in 2023. It was gonna add $100,000 to each unit, and they couldn't do that to make the houses affordable in that neighborhood. It would be past the price point. So they proposed doing the rental unit. And at that time, they knew that those numbers worked. Now we're adding 9 more units to that. So We were going from actually 3 originally, is what that would, dwellings that would be permitted there, to 14. And you guys got the power to say that that's too many, by a lot. I mean, I see that when you guys, I thank you for going to do the due diligence and walk around there and meet with the engineer, but I didn't see any stakes in the ground so you guys could really get a good idea of how it was and where they'd be sitting. So you can walk and point, but when you see it staked out, you go, wow. Then you look up at the trees and you go, whoa. We're looking at it on this pictures here, but when you stand there, you see it's quite different than the neighborhood. And, you know, that's, I've said my piece, and I appreciate your time and consideration, but I don't know how we've got to this with, I mean, yeah, I don't know. You'd have to go home and ask your spouse, say, what do you think? Because that could happen to any one of you guys. This could be your investment across the street. And they do it. And then, yeah, and we're trying to solve the New Hampshire's housing crisis. Have some other towns do stuff. We've grown tremendously. We've done tons of apartment complexes in the past 15 years. And the college is down 2,000. And we're a town of, what, 24,000? And Antioch's down. So there's thousands of students. So I don't know how much we need to grow continuously, but towns around us grow too, because this is the hub. This is where the jobs are at. And I don't want this to be, we keep driving it so we become Claremont. And that's where we're headed. So, thank you.
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Good evening. My name is Greg Taylor, and I reside at 125 Carroll Street. I'm the husband to Paige. I'd just like to thank her and Brian for all the aforementioned points. One concern that I had that I have not heard mentioned yet was how everything is going to pan out as far as tax assessed values. And it's my understanding that there would be a tax abatement on this project, being basically a condominium project. It would fall under the category of, I believe it's E19, if I'm not mistaken. And what would the impact, along with all the other aforementioned things, the impact of traffic in the area, which we have seen considerably grow over the past few years, as people have moved to the area, which I would just state for the record that I'm not completely opposed to there being housing there. I just think that, as was mentioned, 14 units is a bit excessive for that community and for that neighborhood. We have a pretty well-managed community currently where everybody knows each other. And even so, we still have issues with traffic, people parking on the street, to the extent of it even creating at times what would be considered a problem with emergency vehicles accessing the site if need be. If you were to put 14 units in there, I can certainly see there becoming an issue. I know during the last meeting also, and I understand I'm rambling a bit here, just kind of going over some of the points from the last meeting so that they're once again heard. Sewer, water, that would be one consideration, of course, which it sounds like is being assessed and addressed, but what about snow removal, things like parking, et cetera? If there's 14 units there and people have guests, concerned with noise pollution, light pollution, things of that sort. But the major question, as I go back to it, would be, has anybody assessed what the impact to property values, both the tax assessed value and also the resale value of the homes if you happen to be located adjacent to or abutting a development like this, what would the impact of that be? Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I just have a clarification question.
Yeah, just come on up.
I'm Duncan Hilchey. I reside at 45 School Street, new to Keene. But I was wondering, I have a question for staff and also for the developer's representative. Is there a requirement that a certain proportion of this space in a cottage development that is to be green space or shared open space? And for the developer, I'd like to know if you could point out what that space is, which is shared green space.
Yeah, Ms. Fortson. if you-
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Ms. Brenner might be able to tack on some additional information, but basically with the cottage core ordinance, it's supposed to allow some additional density. You could get even additional density bonuses if you're doing workforce housing, senior housing, something like that. But in this case, as long as you meet the maximum impervious surface requirements for the underlying zoning district, that's all that you need to do. You're not required to have a certain percentage of green space like you would if you did something like a conservation residential development subdivision. That's where you'd have to have a designated green space. With this, it's really just the impervious surface requirement from the structures and any surfaces like asphalt.
Mr. Chair, may I add just one thing?
Yeah, please.
For the medium density district, the minimum amount of green space or open space is 40%. So that's one of the things that the applicant had to demonstrate with the plan. And it looks like the applicant is asking if you'd like him to come up.
Yeah, please. Yeah, if you can address that, Mr. Noonan.
Yes, so John Noonan, Fieldstone Land Consultants. We have a table, so it still has to meet zoning and the requirements of the cottage court overlay. So we have a table on our site plan where we have green space, there's 40% minimum is the requirement. We have 49.6%. Impervious coverage can be 60% maximum. We have 50.4% is impervious coverage, which is building and paved areas. And then building coverage, so just the building, could be 45% max of your lot, and we have 26.5%. So those items are just broken out on our site plan sheet. And the impervious is building coverage plus our paved areas on the lot size.
Thank you.
And the green space would be the remainder, that's the landscaped areas.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public? Please.
Thank you. Laura Tobin, Center Street. Sorry. I was just reviewing on the city website what cottage courts are and how they're described, because this just kind of wasn't what I had in mind when we were talking about cottage courts. So cottage courts, this is from the city website. Cottage courts are groupings of small houses around a shared public space, considered a type of missing middle housing. You can go on a little bit further. Oriented around shared green space and have parking screened from the street. There's also something in here about it being pedestrian oriented. So I can't really speak, I don't think very clearly. I haven't followed this project as much, and I'll do some more research on that, but I just wanted to say it wasn't what my understanding was when we were discussing cottage courts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I can't see everybody behind the easel, but I don't see anyone, so I am going to close the public portion of the meeting. Thank you. Okay. So, next step is to proceed to board deliberation, which we do require typically require a motion to get that going, so. Do you have the,
Mr. Chair?
yes, Ms. Fortson?
Yes, thank you. I did just want to bring to front of mind one item that we meant to include in the recommended motion, and it just got lost due to the number of moving parts with the project, is a potential condition subsequent related to vibration monitoring during the driving of the pilings. So if you think that adding something like that would be appropriate, please feel free to
Thank
do
you.
so. I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
I can,
You have a handle on everything?
yeah, I mean, when we get to G, H, and I
Yes.
might want a little help, but I think I have it. But just for point of order, after this, then we deliberate and
Deliberate,
chat
yes.
about it, okay. I move to approve PB 26-12 as shown on the plan set identified as multifamily residential development, tax map 536, lots 49, 50, 55, and 56. Elm City Commons prepared by Fieldstone Land Consultants PLLC at variance scales on April 17, 2026, and last revised on May 19, 2026. And in the elevations identified as Elm City Commons, Elm and Carroll Streets, Keene, New Hampshire, 03431. Prepared by Sampson Architects at varying scales on April 14, 2026, and last revised on June 12, 2026, with the following conditions. 1, prior to the final approval and signature of the plans by the Planning Board Chair, the following conditions precedent shall be met. A, owner's signature appears on the title page and proposed condition plans. B, submittal of 5 full-size paper copies and a flattened PDF version of final plan set and elevations. C, submittal of a recorded voluntary merger for the 4 subject parcels. D, submittal of security to cover the cost of sediment and erosion control measures, landscaping and as-built plans in the form and amount acceptable to the Community Development Director. E, submittal of draft written documentation of any easements or other necessary legal instruments required for this application, which shall be subject to review by the city attorney. F, submittal of an updated plan set showing a native replacement for the Calgary pear trees. G, completion of a sewer flow study to demonstrate there is adequate capacity in the city sewer line, subject to the review and approval of the city engineer. And then 2, subject to final approval and signature of the plans by the Planning Board Chair, the following conditions shall be met. A, prior to the commencement of site work, a pre-construction meeting will be scheduled with community development staff. B, prior to the commencement of site work, the erosion and sediment control measures shall be inspected by the Community Development Department to ensure compliance with this application and all City of Keene regulations. C, prior to the installation of building foundations, the building corners shall be pinned by a surveyor and inspected by community development staff to ensure compliance with the required setbacks. D, submittal of recorded easements and/or any legal instruments necessary for this application by the Community Development Department. E, following the installation of landscaping, the Community Development Department shall be contacted to perform initial inspection. And then F, 1 year following the installation of all landscaping, the Community Development Department shall be contacted to perform final landscaping inspection. And then we added G, foundation construction will be approved by the building permitting department? Yeah, And then H, if turns out that the sewer line is not adequate, the applicant will pay for what I heard is an 8-inch line.
I would just say to upgrade as
For an
necessary.
upgrade. And then I don't have wording for this, though there'll be vibration monitoring during construction for houses close by that could be affected by pilings.
Yeah, I think we'd want to say applicant will provide a plan for monitoring vibrations
Okay,
during the,
what he said.
particularly the driving of the piles.
I think is that it? So I think that's the motion.
Yep, I think that hits it. Ms. Brenner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for not bringing this up earlier, but as you were reading the motion, it reminded me that one thing that staff noticed is that the calorie pear trees that were some of the ornamental trees that got added, while they are not invasive, they are on the New Hampshire's, the State of New Hampshire Invasive Species Watch List. So we reached out to the applicant to see if they would be okay with switching it out for a native tree, and they were fine with that. So that is why that condition of approval was added. And I apologize for not bringing that up earlier.
All right, so okay, well, it says a native replacement for the pear trees. So that's what it should say?
Yes, the motion was read as staff recommended. We just neglected to explain that,
Okay, all right,
yeah, during the.
Thank you. Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Okay. Questions, opinions, discussion? Mr. Cost?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we do need housing in Keene. And I think we've been talking about that for years and years, and so this is a development that will provide that. One of the speakers talked about the idea of cottage court, and when you read the description of cottage court, I think I've said this before at the last meeting and even the field visit. I have some of the same concerns. I've been thinking about this more as motor court than cottage court, because it's basically front doors of housing facing almost 70 feet wide of paving with some grass, so planting areas, but a lot of paving. And so the orientation of the development, we did see plans where it was oriented north and south, seven on each of the streets, Carroll and Elm. And which then, I understand that there was some interest because a lot of the houses have their gabled roofs facing the street, but those gabled roofs are also the front of the houses. The front of the houses are oriented that way. That just didn't seem like a hook to me to orient the houses for that reason, because when you walk up these streets, you're basically a nice walkable community. There are people, there are neighbors, and to have the sides of the houses basically facing the street of only 4 of the houses, and then it's kind of an enclave otherwise, that motor court. And it really doesn't reflect the character of the neighborhood. And I know there's some other things, there aren't townhouses in the neighborhood, but the idea of being street facing and having front doors off the street, to me is fairly important, because that's part of walkable idea to try to get people out to walk downtown, where here, they're basically encouraged to, they're going to pop in the cars because the front door leads right to the cars. It did seem like there is a solution to do it, north and south, 7 on each street. I did hear that it adds some pavement and some other things and some cost, but, I guess I'm just asking we have very talented architects, very talented designers and land planners. And if we were going to develop in Keene, we really want to pay attention to the context. We want to pay attention to what's going on in the neighborhood, what's going on the streets, and try to reflect that and try to add to that and strengthen it. Whereas here, I think this development is sort of imposed in a whole different way. And so I just have heartburn with that. And, you know, I think as we set sites for maybe future developments, to try to use some of the great talented designers we have to really reinforce what the city is trying to do. And I don't think this development reflects that really in any way. So that's my thoughts about it. I think having housing is important, but I think this one, from a neighborhood, community planning, urban design planning, widely misses the mark, and is could have been done much better. Thank you.
Councilor Ellis.
Thank you. I take Mr. Cost's point about the front doors facing the street, but I notice, and I live at the end of Carroll Street, crossing Carroll Street, and we go out our side door, the door that goes to the driveway. Most of the time, we don't go out the front door as often. So I feel that it's pretty standard, or pretty common at least, to go out the side door instead of out the front door. So if the gable end is facing the street, I mean, I and many others, I think, still go out the side. So I don't really have an issue with that. I just want to say that I did receive an email from someone in support of this project. Also, I'd like to say that I read a lot, kind of been trying to understand this about density and piles and all these types of things, and I really, compared to many other condos, including where my in-laws live, I don't feel the density is really that extreme. Also, I want to note that Mr. Noonan did explain at the site visit that because the ground is so soft, it's, I mean, I know that you were there and you heard this, but just for the benefit of anybody else, because the ground is so soft, it probably won't be causing as much vibration as it would if the ground were very hard. So I definitely support our inclusion of the condition that there's monitoring, but I also think that it seems reasonable. It seems like it won't be too much of a problem. And I had one other thought. Oh, also, we may or may not like this project or have different qualms about it, but also if the applicant is meeting all the conditions in the permit, I don't think we can restrict them because we don't like it. If we don't like it, I feel that the applicant has met their conditions, so I don't see any reason to bar them from this project.
Thank you. Mayor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern is the density on the site. I'm thinking of 18 units on 2.3 acres in a previous cottage court that was approved. Thinking of another that was 31 units, I think, on 9 acres. I'm thinking of 14 units on 3/4 of an acre, and thinking that the density to that is adds a lot of density on that site, and that's of concern for me.
Mr. Hayford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see. I think I've appreciated the discussion around orientation to the street. From what I see, the code is a little, 2114.3A, principal buildings shall be oriented toward the public right of way. if due to site constraints, the primary facade of new buildings cannot face the street, then the secondary elevation facing the street shall be designed with form, composition, details consistent, appropriate to the primary facade. I think this project meets that standard. In terms of the purpose of a cottage court overlay district, to promote infill development and redevelopment within established neighborhoods that's built at scale and character. That's a judgment call amongst members here within existing development patterns. Encourage efficient use of land and cost-effective way to deliver community services. Expand the range of housing choices available to meet the needs of the city's changing demographic trends, including smaller households, young professionals, older adults, and empty nesters. Provide developers and property owners with flexibility to achieve high-quality design and develop projects that strengthen existing neighborhoods. And encourage compact development that is pedestrian scaled, healthy, safe, and affordable. And I think, to me, this project meets the spirit of those purposes. I would probably feel different if it was, maybe if it was going to be a landlord situation, a renter situation, but we're talking about units that are going to be owned by the people that live there. I think it has the potential to be accreditive to the city and the neighborhood, to have more homeowners in that area. And so, based on those things, I find myself in favor, and the conditions that we've mentioned, I find myself in favor of approving the proposal before us tonight.
Mr. Bergeron?
I think I would kind of echo those sentiments in that, when I look at the streetscape with this, as opposed to all the units facing out into the street, I think this is a better use of the property or a better view of the property as opposed to having all of the units facing out to the street. It gives it more green space around the buildings, as well as having less of a mass of buildings facing the street, making it look more like it's other houses in the neighborhood. Again, it's a intense use for the property, but it seems to fit the regulation. I think that's where I'm at with it.
Mr. Mayhew?
While this project, in my opinion, does meet the minimums that we need to, pardon me, to approve it, I do think it is distastefully done. It is very, very bland. It does not match the character of the neighborhood. This is an area of the neighborhood that I walk all the time, and I do always look at this lot and wonder what's going to happen with it, but it does provide missing middle housing, and we do very much so lack this. I don't see whole families living here just because it's 2 bedrooms, 1,100 square feet. It's very limiting, but while it serves a purpose, it does it poorly.
Okay, unless someone else has something, I think we need to call the vote. So, so we have a motion and seconded. All those in favor of approval? All opposed? Okay. Application is approved. You guys noted the vote? All right, great. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have a public hearing, PB-26-15, major site plan and surface water conditional use permit, Eversource L163 transmission line. Applicant Normando Associates, Inc., on behalf of owner Public Service Company of New Hampshire, doing business as Eversource Energy, proposes to replace 5 existing utility structures along the L163 transmission line. The proposed work area is located approximately 1 mile north of the entrance to Old Gilsum Road from Timberlane Drive. A surface water protection CUP is requested for approximately 1,930 square feet of impact within the 75-foot surface water buffer to allow for the installation of timber matting and a temporary gravel access road. Does staff have a recommendation for completeness?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner again. The applicant has requested exemptions from submitting a grading plan, landscaping plan, lighting plan, elevations and renderings, a drainage report, traffic report, soil analysis, historic evaluation, screening analysis, and architectural analysis. Planning staff have made the preliminary determination that granting the requested exemptions would have no bearing on the merits of the application and recommends that the board accept the application as complete.
Thank you, Ms. Fortson. Can I get a motion for completeness of the application?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Any discussion about completeness? Okay. I just note that Mr. Mayhew is out of the room at the moment, but let's proceed with the vote for completeness. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is deemed complete. So I'll now turn it over to the applicant.
Yeah, my name's Jeremy Fennell, Eversource Energy.
Elizabeth Oliver, Normando Associates. And yes, we are here presenting on behalf of Eversource Energy in the application to complete the one-to-one replacement of these 5 existing utility structures in the city of Keene. The work would require access along Old Gilsum Road, which is not proposed to be improved by the project. And it will involve an impacts to the 75-foot buffer of one wetland as part of building a temporary gravel access road. The gravel access road will be restored to vegetative cover following completion of the project. Any questions?
Questions for applicant? I guess not. Oh,
Sorry.
Mr. Hafer.
Before I gave up mountain biking, I used to ride that road sometime. Some of the culvert crossings are a challenge for water drainage. Could any of that be improved as part of this, or what? Is there any responsibility to improve that along the right of way, or you just along Old Gilsum Road? I guess is not your jurisdiction. I was thinking out loud, I guess, in my question. If there's challenges with drainage or culvert crossings on that Old Gilsum Road that causes some flooding or anything like that, it's probably not permit, not relevant. So I'll withdraw my question. Thank you, Megan.
Would you like me to talk about what we are gonna do on Old Gilsum Road? Okay. So, it's a existing Class 6 road. So the Parks and Rec Department, DPW, has asked us not really to improve it. We're gonna get the pre-existing conditions of the road and, use the road, maybe add some gravel if needed, if we had heavy rainfalls, but we're not really expecting that. And then we'll restore it to pre-existing conditions. So that was what we discussed with the Conservation Commission, and Parks and Rec was there. Andy Bohannon, is that?
Other questions? Okay, thank you. So we're gonna just ask you guys to step back for just a second and give the mic to staff for the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner. So this is a pretty typical annual request that we get from Eversource. Usually they're making improvements to one of their transmission lines in terms of replacing existing wooden poles with updated weathered steel poles, which is what's proposed as part of this project. This time, as was mentioned, it's the replacement of 5 poles in Keene. They're going along quite a bit of the length of the L163 line, so it'll be Keene. I think it's also like Stoddard, Antrim. There's a few different municipalities that they'll have to go through an approval process with. But yes, access for the project is going to be from Old Gilsum Road. And if you look at figure 1 in the staff report, it sort of shows you that they're gonna have to travel quite a ways up Old Gilsum Road. It's, I think, about a mile or so. Before they hit the Eversource right-of-way, and then just one section of that right-of-way is going to cross through the wetlands buffer, and so that's why they need to get the surface water CUP, is for the creation of that temporary gravel road within the 75-foot wetlands buffer, because this project does run through the conservation and the rural zoning districts, which require that 75-foot buffer to be maintained. So I'll quickly take you through the surface water CUP standards, as well as the site development standards. In terms of regional impact, staff did not feel that there was the potential for regional impact. We did get some comments from the city engineer. There is one section of the gravel road that's proposed to cross over a stone wall. And so we have addressed that through a condition of approval that I'll mention at the end. It's basically that if they have to remove the stone wall, that it be reset by a surveyor and then verified by the city engineer's office, just to make sure that everything is in the appropriate spot, because that is assumed to be a property boundary. I think the plan is for them to use timber matting on top of it and not affect it at all, but just in case they find that they do need to. The other comments from the city engineer were just a few notes letting the applicant know that they're going to need to obtain an encumbrance and or excavation permit if necessary, and that they also are going to coordinate access along Old Gilsum Road with the Parks and Recreation Department, since it is a trail. Going into Article 11.6.2, those are where the surface water CUP standards live. The first one is related to the relocation of the proposed use or activity. Basically, given the fact that this is an existing 150-foot wide right-of-way, it's not something that could be easily relocated on the site. It's established. Vegetation, is already trimmed and maintained in this area by Eversource. So it would be creating more impact to try to relocate something like this versus maintain it in its existing condition. The next standard is related to buffer encroachment. The proposed temporary access road is going to impact about 2,000 square feet within the buffer. And to minimize impacts to the buffer and the wetland, the applicant notes that the access road is the shortest feasible route and will utilize an existing wetland crossing rather than creating a new crossing, so that standard appears to be met. The next standard is related to adverse impacts. And it's the proposed replacement of one structure on the easternmost side that's going to require that wetland buffer. And so the applicant is proposing to maintain and stabilize the access road as necessary during construction, utilizing timber matting for the wetland crossings, and then appropriate perimeter controls like straw wattles or silt fencing are proposed to be used during construction to protect adjacent surface water resources. They're also going to have an environmental monitor on site, just to make sure that all of the erosion control measures, silt fencing, anything like that, is maintained properly throughout the course of construction, and that restoration is done properly, so that standard appears to be met. For the preservation of the buffer, the applicant is proposing to restore impacted areas of the site to their pre-construction conditions through site stabilization, seeding, and mulching at the end of construction. All other areas within the buffer that will be used during the project, such as Old Gilsum Road, are already disturbed, so that standard appears to be met. And then there is, under section 11.6.2.e, there is an entire very long list of other things that you can consider during your deliberations, such as the quality of the wetlands and things like that. The surface water resources in the project area consist of a scrub shrub wetland and one vernal pool. The State Wildlife Action Plan characterizes this area as a Tier 3 habitat, which is considered supporting landscapes, with a hemlock, hardwood, pine habitat. The applicant notes that the existing vegetation will be restored following construction and that the project will result in no permanent changes that are going to alter or eliminate any of the functions and values currently provided by the surface water resources. As part of our normal CUP process, the Conservation Commission did weigh in with some recommendations, which Ms. Brenner will share.
Thank you. Mary Brenner, Senior Planner. So the Conservation Commission met on Monday, June 15th, so last week Monday, and made the following recommendations. The first one is documentation of the existing conditions on Old Gilsum Road in the project area. And then addition of a note on the plan, as well as a condition of approval stating that Old Gilsum Road shall be returned to pre-construction conditions. They also requested invasive species management throughout the course of the project to ensure that no invasive plants are introduced into the project area. And then they also requested use of a pollinator-friendly seed mix. And I will note, as the applicant noted, the deputy city manager was present at this Conservation Commission meeting and asked a number of questions about the road and communication with the public. So it might just be worth noting that the Parks and Recreation Director, Kara Fisk-Hennessy, has been in contact and has asked for coordination and messaging to the public for the users of the road.
Thank you, Mary. And my understanding is that they've already been in contact, with Kara and with Brian, who is the city engineer. I'm not going to really go through the site development standards too much because really at the bottom line is that they're not proposing really any permanent changes other than the replacement of of the structures. As well as, potentially some gravel to be placed around the structures for future maintenance access. They are going to require a few different federal permits, one of them federal and state permits. They're going to need an alteration of terrain permit from New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit, and an EPA 2022 general construction permit. So staff would recommend that the submittal of those items be included as conditions of approval. In terms of snow storage and removal, snow is really only going to be removed as it needs to be. If there's not work happening, snow is not going to be removed. No landscaping proposed other than the seed mix. Screening, lighting, sewer, and water are not applicable. And then traffic and access management is obviously going to be either from the Eversource right-of-way or from Old Gilsum Road. And then there is going to be a total of about 43,565 square feet of land disturbance outside of the surface water buffer. And that would be to prepare the work pads at the 5 structures to be replaced. The proposed work area is not located within the 100-year floodplain, and there are no proposed placement of fill within the wetlands. So that standard appears to be met. They have an entire stormwater pollution prevention plan that will be created to handle any potential sources of hazardous or toxic materials. So staff recommends that the submittal of that plan be included as a condition of approval. And then noise will just be limited to typical noise generated by construction activities and won't change after the completion of construction. So that is all I have.
Questions for staff? I have a question. The Conservation Commission's recommendations that you read, I don't, unless I missed them, I don't see them reflected in any conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yep, we forgot to add them in, but staff are supportive of those conditions.
Okay.
If you'd like, I can read them off again, if that's helpful.
When we get to that point, that would be helpful, yeah. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, but I agree entirely with you, and I think comment for the staff's concern. I think I heard 4 different recommendations from them about documentation of current conditions on Old Gilsum Road, invasive species management plan, pollinator plants be used to, in any resurfacing or replanting, and coordination on road restriction and communications with Parks and Rec.
So the coordination with Parks and Rec wasn't a recommendation from Conservation Commission, although that is something that staff has asked for. But the other recommendation from the Conservation Commission was both the addition of a note on the plan as well as a condition of approval stating that Old Gilsum Road shall be returned to pre-construction conditions. So the idea there is they're not proposing to improve the road, but if they were to create deep ruts in the road or something like that, they will restore it to its pre-construction condition since it is so heavily used by mountain bikers and hikers. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions for staff? Mr. Hafer?
Maybe somewhat of a rhetorical question, but what if pre-construction conditions are poor? That's sort of the supposition sort of means that the conditions to start with are good and we want them to return to good, but if.
Not necessarily. So the idea here, this being a Class 6 road, what that means is that it's a public right-of-way that at one point in time was a normal public right-of-way, like any other road. And then it was discontinued subject to gates and bars, I believe, in this instance. And so the city no longer maintains this road.
So conditions are what they become naturally.
Yes, exactly. And so the city wants to be very careful with a Class 6 road that it doesn't get improved to the point where it becomes now a road that would need to be maintained in a condition that they don't want it to be maintained at. So that was deliberate. The pre-construction condition was a deliberate choice of wording.
Thank you.
Mr. Bergeron?
My only question would be, I suppose, would be if, based on the condition of the road, the age of the road, and this, if they're using heavy equipment over that road and say an old metal culvert collapses under the weight of the trucks, it's their responsibility to replace that culvert.
Yes, and I should mention that so this is the latest in a series of applications that we've seen over the course of the past however many years. And so Old Gilsum Road was actually improved, I want to say like 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago maybe. I'm getting the thumbs up from the applicant. So Eversource had to improve the road for a previous project, so it is suitable for the heavy trucks.
Good.
Yeah.
Seeing no further questions, I will open the public portion. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to comment on this project? Just raise your hand if you are. Going once? All right, so I'm seeing no one. I'm going to close the public portion and move to our deliberation phase. So I will entertain a motion.
Are we adding anything from the
We are,
items?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll try and you can help as well.
Yeah, Mary can help you out with that.
Okay, I move to approve PB 2615 as shown on the plan set identified as L163, line ACR Project Keene, Nelson, Stoddard, and Antrim, New Hampshire, prepared by Normando Associates at varying scales on April 22nd, 2026, and last revised on June 3rd, 2026, with the following conditions. 1, prior to final approval and signature of the plans by the planning board chair, the following conditions shall be met. A, owner signature appears on the plans. B, submittal of 5 color copies of the final plan set. C, submittal of documentation of all necessary permits and approvals, including but not limited to NHDES statutory permit by notification for utility maintenance activities. 2, NHDES alteration of terrain permit. 3, U.S. Corps of Engineers permit, self-verification. And 4, EPA 2022 general construction permit.
And
2,
just hold on
subsequent.
just for one sec. Your conditions will be precedent or subsequent?
So I would recommend, if you're willing to add a condition precedent, so 1D, to require the addition of a note on the plan stating that Old Gilsum Road shall be returned to pre-construction conditions.
So that would be Roman numeral 5?
No, it would be a new
A D?
a new item under number 1, so 1D.
1D. Can you say that again? The area will be,
Addition of a note on the plan stating that Old Gilsum
Okay.
Road shall be returned to pre-construction conditions.
Okay. The others you believe are subsequent?
They could be, the documentation of the existing conditions could be a condition precedent or subsequent. I think really the
Any
note
strong
is the one that
opinions?
would need to be before final approval. And then, the invasive species management and the use of a pollinator-friendly seed mix, again, they could be either or, but I think making them a condition subsequent makes sense.
so you want to,
I think that works. I think that the documentation of Old Gilsum Road conditions is a subsequent to approval, but the comment on the plan
Right.
that it will be returned is a precedent.
Good. I
so we're
see-
going to put the
I
others,
see heads nodding in approval of that, so
so we'll put the others
we'll put the others in the,
Under 2.
in the as subsequent.
Subsequent to approval and signature of the plans by the planning board chair, the following conditions shall be met. A, prior to the commencement of site work, submittal of the stormwater pollution prevention plan to the community development department. And B, following the completion of construction, any portion of stone walls that were impacted shall be reset in the same location, verified by a surveyor licensed in the state of New Hampshire, and confirmed by the city engineer. So then we would have a C. Documentation of existing conditions will be provided.
For Old Gilsum Road
For Old
in the
Gilsum
project
Road.
area, because it's only a certain section of the road that they'll be impacting.
Where required. And then we have a 2, and are we asking for invasive species to be removed or not to be added?
We're asking them to monitor for invasive
Okay.
species.
During
And-
construction?
And a management plan.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I thought I heard you say.
Yep, so currently, it's my understanding and the understanding of the applicant as well as the Conservation Commission members that there are no invasive species in that area. So this is more about monitoring to make sure, even though the risk is low that any material will be brought in, it could happen where, one of the mats that they bring in has some seeds attached to it or something like that. In that case, that they would monitor, and so that as soon as it shows up, they could remove it and reduce the risk of it spreading. That's my understanding of the intent from the Conservation Commission meeting.
Okay. And the words are?
To monitor for invasive species throughout the course of the project.
Throughout construction?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so monitor so 2 would be a monitor for invasive species throughout the course of construction. And then 3 is about pollinator plants. We want to, where planting is required or for replacement, that they would use pollinator plants.
Yes, so they requested use of a pollinator-friendly seed mix for any restoration. Yeah.
Okay, so pollinator-friendly seed mix for any replanting or ground covers or such. There was one more, though, that was about coordination. Is that, Mayor, you had mentioned that one,
The one with Parks and Rec.
Yes, so that wasn't a request of the Conservation Commission. You could certainly make it a condition if you would like. But I think everything has been addressed that the Conservation Commission recommended.
It-
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
That roadway restrictions during construction be communicated by the contractor to Parks and Recreation and the public.
okay? That's it.
Does that capture all the Conservation Commission's recommendations? Good. Okay. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everyone feel like they understand the motion? Okay, good. Now, discussion, questions, comments? Mr. Mayor?
And I think that the impact is regional, but the contractors and petitioner are seeking the approval of abutting communities, so I think that they're covering the regional impacts adequately. I also am pleased to see that the replacement is with steel pole, something that is more durable, and I think that that's a good improvement proposal.
Yeah, may I ask a clarifying question, Ms. Berner? If we declare this to have regional impact, that requires us to notify the other towns.
Yes, that's correct. If the entire board were to vote to find this to be a development of regional impact, we would put this on hold and send out a notification to the Regional Planning Commission and neighboring towns. When we were looking at this application as staff, we were really only considering the portion of the project in Keene. And looking at those 5 structures, it's a limited project area and doesn't come anywhere near the boundaries with other towns.
Yeah, and I would also point out to the board that last year we approved the one that goes along Keene State and goes into Swansea and Troy, and I don't believe we made that a development of regional impact for the same reason, that the construction's very discreetly contained to the poles that are in Keene. Yeah. So that would be my recommendation in this case as well.
Sounds good.
Mr. Cost? Yeah.
Just to clarify, then each town will hold their own meeting about the sections going into, as they go through other towns?
They will, yes.
So we're just going to worry about Keene?
We could ask the applicant, but you have applications with the other towns as well.
Yeah, so our alteration of terrain permit, we notified the town clerk and I believe the Conservation Commission too, for each town.
As well as for the standard ridge and fill wetland permit. Copies of both of those applications go out to every municipality that have impacts related to those permits.
I just want to correct you, we only got statutory permit by notification.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Statutory permit
It's
by
okay.
notification.
So only in Keene and Nelson, so.
Okay.
But regardless, every single town for alteration of terrain, they were, and we also have community outreach to the individual landowners and to the town administrators. So everybody's very aware because, as you know, we have large equipment, so they're noticeable.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. More questions, comments? I think we're ready to vote. So all those in favor of approving, where are we? PB-26-15, the motion that's on the table, indicate. Any opposed? All right. application is approved. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just
Mayor?
to,
Sure.
just to check back with you, there could be no harm in the city or the chairman or notifying the other towns that we have acted affirmatively on that portion that impacts Keene.
Okay. It's a good suggestion. I can work with Mary and we can figure out the best way to do that. Thank you, folks. Okay. Moving right along. Other business? I don't think we have any other business on the agenda today. Could ask Ms. Brenner if there's any staff updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only update is that, and I believe I emailed this out to the board earlier today, but there is a training opportunity on June 26th. And normally it would come at a cost, but because Keene is a housing champion community, any of you could sign up for free. So I did send out the information about that, but it's, I forget the exact title, but I've gone to a different version of this training in the past, and I found it to be very helpful for understanding all of the different factors that go into making a development project work. That training that I went to, I think, was about development in general, not just housing, but the examples that they used happened to be housing examples, and it was very illuminating to see the different all the many factors that go into making a project actually pencil out. So I would encourage anyone who's interested to sign up.
Thank you. Yeah, I would too, except it's 8 o'clock in Portsmouth, right? Mr. Mayhew.
I do highly recommend the course. I took it when Ivy was doing it here in Keene. She's a genius. I have to say that. I loved the course, and I've seen some of her earlier work, and with ordinances, but yeah.
Thank you for that. Any board members have new business they would like to bring up? Mr. Cost?
I guess I'm not sure if this is where you do this, but I'd like, this last project that we talked about, well, for me, it just agitated me, the cottage court project. And it seems like the cottage court CUP and some of our architectural standards allow stuff to happen that maybe we don't want to happen. Maybe some people do want them to happen, so I don't know. But from a good planning, urban designing, keeping in context with Keene, it seems like stuff can get by and we don't have anything to really say no because it isn't there. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to, not in this venue, but somehow with the community development, to talk about that and see if some things could be tightened up. Because as we get more and more development, and most of us are we're all pretty much, well, I'm pro-housing. I want to see housing built. But I'm concerned that they're going to be built in really bad ways that are going to start to diminish the city. And rather than, when you have a developer willing to build 14 units, that's an opportunity to improve things and reinforce things and kind of feed into what we talk about on our master plan and everything. And we can't, and there isn't, I think we have too many little loopholes and things that people, that we can't point to. And then also the people who are doing the designs, if they had better guidance up front, they would be guided to do better things. And so that's new business, if there's any way to talk about that. And I don't know what it would be, but just putting that out there is something I think is important, because I think we're going to see a lot of stuff happen that we're going to let happen and maybe wouldn't always be for the best, other than providing housing.
Yeah, just from my perspective, I think the joint PLD and planning board meetings are an appropriate place for basically fine-tuning the land development code and other ordinances. That's where we get the input to that.
So does that happen as new business in those meetings, or?
Should be able to, or you could draft a proposal, you know, and ask staff to look at it.
We'll chat. Thank you.
Okay. Other new business? All right, so upcoming dates of interest. Speaking of the devil, Joint Planning Board and PLD Committee, July 13th, 2026, 6:30 PM. Planning Board Steering Committee, July 14, 2026, 12 noon. Planning Board Site Visit, July 22, 2026, 8 AM, to be confirmed, depending on applications. And then finally, the next meeting of this board, July 27th, 2026, at 6:30 PM. We have no more time issues, but we do need to do something that we rarely do. We need to go into a non-public session. So do you have that motion, Ken? Can you?
Okay, recommended motion, okay. Move to go into non-public session to discuss pending litigation pursuant to RSA 91-A:3, 2E.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, all right, thank you. Okay, we're gonna take a roll call vote.
Harold Farrington,
Yes.
Roberta Master Giovanni, Mayor Jay Kahn,
Yes?
Counselor Molly Ellis, David Bergeron,
Yes.
Mike Hafer,
Yes.
Ken Cost,
Yes.
and Stefan Mayu.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, who was the second on that motion?
I did.
Jay, okay, Jay was the second, okay,
And
thank you.
I'd suggest we turn off our mics.
Yep, they're gonna come and collect them, right?
Yeah, if you want to call a recess, we can.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna call we don't need a lot of time, like a 3-minute recess.